So Jon Stewart did a segment here titled, Trump is the opposite of who his supporters claim he is. Let's take a look, and we'll break it down as we go.
But on the other hand, about Kamala Harris, I've been hearing some very concerning things about her.
She's come under some criticism for being relatively vague in her policy proposals.
They don't have enough specifics on the solutions.
When she tried to explain what she would do, it made no sense. It's gibberish.
The public demands a detailed plan of action, and they're not getting it from her.
We demand that! If there is one thing that the American public demands, it is a detailed plan of, the Golden Bachelorette. I hope they selected candidates who live nearby her because old people are not known to want to change their lives. Anyway, back to the point. The point is, Harris speaks gibberish because she is part Indian, part black, and part gibber. If Kamala Harris dissolves into gibberish every time she's asked for specific policies, then I dare say she will not earn my completely irrelevant New Jersey vote.
I will get rid of unnecessary decree requirements for federal jobs.
Low and no interest loans to small businesses.
Expand the tax deduction for startups to $50,000. $6,000 in tax relief to families during the first year of a child's life. Capital gains will be 28%.
Excuse me? But as Americans, we demanded a detailed plan of action, not random numbers.
Thank God he's bringing this up, man. It was driving me crazy. This narrative took hold and, everybody ran with it. Oh, she's not giving the policy specifics of what she wants. And, literally a week before people were running with that sentiment, she released a whole bunch of policies that she says her and Tim Walz are going to focus on. Now, you could disagree with the policies. You could say, hey, I have issues with this one or that one, or why didn't you include this thing on the list? But she did release policies. And he's playing the clip of her talking about it at various times. So I for the life of me, I don't understand how some narratives take hold and then they explode. This was one of those narratives. Oh, she does not giving us policy stuff. And she did, and you just pretended like she didn't. I don't know what to tell you. And then the more important part is relative to what Trump is saying. Are you kidding me? She's given way more policy specifics, but I think he's about to go and prove that point.
You have left the door wide open, lady. Because clearly Donald Aloysius Trump would not trifle with America in that manner.
What are the specific mechanics of how prices come down? The steps that would be taken in a second term for you?
Ooh.
I remember this because we covered it. He gives the worst possible answer you've ever heard.
Good question. Mr. Trump, what is your detailed plan of action for bringing down prices? And I believe I'll mark your responses on this handy-dandy chart. I already have my... I'll have my pen ready all the way up here at the top of specificity and make sensitude. Begin.
First of all, she can't do an interview. She could never do this interview because you ask questions like, give me a specific answer. She talks about her lawn when she was growing up. This woman is not equipped to be president.
I guess I had the wrong chart. And the question, sir, was specific to how are you going to bring down inflation? Your answer so far has been, huh? But perhaps I cut you off unfairly.
She's not equipped to deal with President Xi, who I took in hundreds of billions of dollars with him, and Putin. We had no war with Putin. Remember, and I'm just going to go off just for this, with Bush, they took a lot. Russia. With Biden, they're trying to take everything. With Obama, they took a lot. With Trump, Russia took nothing. Just remember that.
He was incapable of actually answering the direct question. It was unbelievable.
Now, you know what? Maybe he didn't really want to talk about his inflation policy, since economists say it would make inflation worse, which, is the wrong direction. Let's give Trump a second chance.
If you win in November, can you commit to prioritizing legislation to make childcare affordable? And if so, what specific piece of legislation will you advance?
Oh, that's a fabulous question. Children need childcare, whether it's a nanny or duct tape to a chair with an iPad. But it costs money. Obviously, duct tape and iPads and in-app purchases are...
Well, I would do that, and we're sitting down. I was we had Senator Marco Rubio, and my daughter Ivanka was so impactful on that issue. It's a very important issue. But I think when you talk about the kind of numbers that I'm talking about, that, because, look, child care is child care.
Look, to be fair to Trump, he goes on to babble, and I speak Trumpese so I can decode it for you. What he was trying to say is, I'm going to take the money that we raise from tariffs, and I'm going to put some of it towards childcare and give people childcare. That's what he was trying to say. Here's the problem with that. He's not going to do that, and he hasn't released any sort of proposal on doing that. He made it up on the spot because he was in a corner, and so he figured, let me just go back to the thing I love ranting about these days, which is tariffs, and I'll try to link it to childcare. But yes, he did. He talked about it in a roundabout way where everybody was like, what the fuck are you babbling about? You know what that answer reminded me of? I don't know how many of you guys remember this because you're probably younger than me, but Trump said, childcare is childcare. It reminded me, go look this up if you haven't seen it. George W. Bush was asked a question on, I think it was tribal sovereignty. And he said something like, tribal sovereignty is just that, it's sovereign. It's like you just repeated the thing. Like you're not saying anything.
Continue where he says we will pay for childcare with the trillions we're going to receive by levying tariffs on foreign nations, which apparently isn't how that works, but one more.
Political opponents are saying that you want to ban IVF. Those who are watching here tonight who may be going through this same struggle and are concerned about being able to have this option. And I'd love for you to talk to them about how they should feel.
Life is pretty tough. It can be beautiful, but it can be difficult. We are doing something with IVF, because IVF, as you know from friends and people it's really worked out very well for a lot of people. It gave them a child when they would not have had a child. And I told my people I wanted to look at this a couple of weeks ago. And as you know, we have no taxes on a thing called tips. You know that?
Incapable of answering policy questions. He doesn't have it in him. For those of you just listening podcast style, Jon Stewart has had these charts the whole time. This one says, what the actual fuck are you talking about? And time underneath. And he's like putting where it would go.
What the actual are you talking about? How do you want people to feel about IVF? Well, I have no taxes on a thing called tips.
By the way, I should point out, just so you guys know, the no tax on tips thing is a scam because it's just going to allow venture capitalists to recategorize their income as a tip and have no taxes on it. It's this broad thing where he's like, no taxes on tips. It leaves the door open for so much fuckery where mega wealthy people can redefine their income as tips and then pay no taxes, right? And so Kamala's proposal was actually better. To be fair, she said it casually at an event with a union, so I don't know if she actually is going to do it or even if it's even in her plans. But she said no tax on tips for service workers. It was for service workers and hospitality workers. So she said no tax on tips for service workers and hospitality workers, which is way more defined and way more limited to people who are middle or bottom tier of the economic ladder. So I understand I'm in favor of giving those sorts of people a tax cut. I'm not in favor of recategorizing venture capitalist income as tips so that they have to pay no taxes. And Trump's whole thing is a massive loophole so that the wealthy can pay fewer taxes, because that's what his politics actually is.
You know what? I do actually see the connection. I get it now. So you see, IVF fertilizes an egg with a sperm, and sperm comes from a penis, and a penis has a tip. So I can only assume Donald Trump is talking about circumcision, which Jews call a tax on tips. All right, let's move on. Clearly, what people like about Donald Trump is not his clear, specific policies as they demand from Kamala Harris. But hey, I'm still open. I'm an undecided voter, because the horse kicked him ahead. Let's hear some of Trump's passionate supporters explain what they see as his strengths.
He has really become the candidate of the working man, of the everyman.
President Trump cares deeply about rig workers, truck drivers, roughnecks.
He worked with plumbers and electricians. He worked with painters and bricklayers.
President Trump is the best friend American workers have ever had in the White House.
He's our best friend! Donald Trump is the champion of hardworking men and women. He's behind every kind of worker, from auto to sex. The kind of people... Donald Trump is behind the kind of people who have to work overtime to pay the bills.
I know a lot about overtime. I'd hated to give overtime. I hated it. I'd get other people, I shouldn't say this, but I'd get other people in, I wouldn't pay. I hated it.
You're right. You shouldn't have said that. You shouldn't have said it at all, because you're admitting to f***ing people over who worked for you. I mean, it's funny, but it undercuts the working man's friend thing. Well, yeah, it's fine. You don't want to give them overtime, but it's not like you think it's funny to fire them when they complain about something like not getting overtime.
Well, you're the greatest cutter. I mean, I look at what you do. You walk in and you just say, you want to quit? They go on strike. I won't mention the name of the company, but they go on strike and you say, that's okay, you're all gone. You're all gone. So every one of you is gone.
By the way, man, this is his track record is like this too. I remember in 2015 and 2016, these long, detailed articles were coming out after, investigative research, and they found that Trump had stiffed so many people he did business with. Plumbers and electricians and painters and all sorts of people. There was an article that came out recently where the guy who was the architect for Trump's golf clubhouse, I don't know which course, but somebody who was a reporter talked to him at one of these events for The Apprentice, and the guy told him straight up, yeah, Trump told me I'll pay you half up front, half later. He paid me the half up front. He never paid me the half later. And I figured if I take him to court, it's going to cost more money, so I might as well just not even get the second half, because what am I going to do? I might end up with less money if I have to pay to go to court, right? This is what Trump has done, man, historically. This is what he's done. He's stiffed so many people. So, and again, people look at this and they somehow have rationalized, no, he's going to fight for me. No, you're the mark. You're the sucker. He's shaking down his own people right now with his Trump Bibles and his Trump watches. That's more of a money laundering thing, I think. But his NFT shit and his crypto trading shit, and he's just a con artist. I don't know what to tell you. He's just a con artist. And here he is. It doesn't matter that he was shitting on, oh, yeah, I don't do overtime, right? It doesn't matter that he was saying that. It doesn't matter he was praising Elon Musk for being anti-union. A bunch of idiots will still pretend like he's pro-worker. It's insane. Guys, under him, 200,000 manufacturing jobs were lost. 200,000. And this is as he virtue signaled like he was the candidate who would protect jobs and not outsource them. We lost 200,000. Under Biden, we gained 800,000 manufacturing jobs. These are just the numbers. These are just the numbers. He was a failure. He was a fraud. The whole carrier factory thing where he pretended like he was going to save their jobs. Within a year, all those jobs were outsourced anyway. And on top of that, the carrier factory robbed the American taxpayer because they took a subsidy too. So the worst of both worlds. The jobs were outsourced anyway, and they shook down the taxpayers. Trump allowed all of it. Lordstown. Look at the disaster that was the Lordstown plant. He's just a fraud. He's just a fraud.
Every time Trump talks about workers, it's like watching A Christmas Carol in reverse. I just fired these 3 ghosts who were trying to get overtime. So the supporting the working man thing is nonsense. What other things do his supporters like about him?
I think in 65 days, the American people are going to vote for President Trump because they know he's the guy who will defend their right to speak.
We're aligned with each other on other key issues, like protecting freedom of speech.
Okay, I get it now. So it's not really a policy case for Trump. It's a principle case for Trump. The man, no matter what is said about him, he believes in the Bill of Rights, the Constitution. The government should never punish speech, even if you don't like the speech.
Mr. Trump saying publicly the FCC should revoke ABC's license over unfounded claims about ABC News allegedly rigging the presidential debate.
Former President Trump says that he will deport students who participate in pro-Palestinian protests.
Donald Trump said that anyone who criticizes the Supreme Court justices should be arrested and jailed.
Donald Trump earlier today said you burned the American flag, you should get a year behind bars.
During the 2024 campaign, Trump has been, quote, venting about the need to punish late-night comedians for their anti-Trump material.
Thank you, Jon Stewart. One of the only people in media pushing back against this bogus narrative that, like, Trump is anti-censorship and pro-free speech. I mean, it's just, this shit drives me crazy, guys. You have no idea. I'm going to be in an early grave from the toll that it takes on me to hear fucking idiots make the case that he's anti-censorship and pro-free speech. How many times? He listed some of the stuff there, but flag burning, they want to give you a year in jail for that. He sued CNN for $475 million because they said the big lie about his election denialism. He sued Bill Maher for $5 million over a joke. This is before he was president, but it shows you the kind of guy he is and how authoritarian he is. He said he wants to open up the libel laws to sue journalists. He called for the journalists who reported on the Supreme Court abortion ruling. He wanted them to be jailed for getting the leak. As Jon Stewart says, wants to deport pro-Palestine protesters. A lot of people don't remember this, but he gag ordered the EPA from telling the truth on climate change. I mean, that's levels of authoritarianism that we didn't even think were possible. They arrested and charged 6 journalists with felony rioting. The classic examples are he didn't pardon Assange or Snowden or Daniel Hale. He wanted to invoke the Insurrection Act to deploy U.S. soldiers against George Floyd protesters. And then, of course, the classic, he called to terminate all rules, regulations, and articles in the Constitution. And this is to say nothing about the fact that he launched Truth Social to be a free speech alternative to Twitter, and then he started censoring shit on Truth Social. I mean, the shit is... God, man. I can't stand the arguments people use in defense of Trump. I just can't stand it.
Isn't being on basic cable at 11 p.m. punishment enough? All right. So we know the policy thing about free speech and the hero of the working class thing are all bullshit. But I'm still undecided. I'm still open. Give me something I could work with.
He's an anti-war guy. He is going to get us out of these endless wars.
He's one by one knocking down the arguments that piss me off the most, that are the biggest lies about Trump.
Trump believes that the next 4 years, we need no new wars.
First of all, I didn't know Max Headroom still had a show.
Looks like they're doing like a Pee Wee Herman lookalike contest. Tom Cotton and Trey Gowdy.
But still, anti-war. I'm anti-war. I'm absolutely behind that sentiment.
But if I were the president, I would inform the threatening country, in this case Iran, that if you do anything to harm this person, we are going to blow your largest cities and the country itself to smithereens. We're going to blow it to smithereens. You can't do that.
That's just war with Iran. Middle East doesn't count. We've been bombing them for 40 years. They love it. Okay, forget about ideals. Forget about policies. What are the personal qualities you're voting for?
People just like that honesty of Donald Trump. He tells it like it is.
A man of his word.
He's a truth teller.
Are you f***ing kidding me right now? Are you f***ing kidding me right now? He is a truth teller?
They're eating the dogs.
Oh, my God, man. Thank you, Jon Stewart. One by one, he knocked down all the bogus arguments that are pro-Trump. And by the way, I highly recommend, if you haven't seen it yet, Mehdi Hasan did a piece on how Trump is not anti-war. Go check that out. It's got a lot of facts that I mention on this show all the time. You guys are the ones who know it better than anybody else. I'm sure you can recite the list back to me, but increasing drone strikes 432%, that's a huge deal, man. In fact, there were 2,243 drone strikes in just his first 2 years as president. That was more than Obama over 8 years. Okay, by the way, there was a 330% increase in civilian deaths in Afghanistan under Trump. Do not tell me he is anti-war. He also bombed Syria twice, bombed Somalia, kept us in Iraq and Afghanistan. And again, they look at this and they're saying, no new wars. Really? I'm giving you incredibly hawkish, neocon, bloodthirsty policies that they pursued and had horrible consequences. And your reaction, no new wars. Trump literally bragged about occupying a third of Syria to, quote, take the oil. He let Israel illegally annex the Golan Heights. He assassinated a top Iranian commander as that dude was fighting ISIS. And that led to retaliatory strikes against our troops in the region at one of our bases. They tried to coup Venezuela, ripped up the Iran agreement, armed Saudi Arabia as they did a genocide. Says he wants to do war with Mexico in the second term over the drug cartels. Says Biden's not supporting Israel strongly enough. He dropped the Moab, the mother of all bombs, on Afghanistan. He had packed his administration with Mike Pompeo and John Bolton and Gina Haspel and neocon warmongers. Literally the first military decision Trump made as president was a raid, and they killed a young American girl in that raid. It was a raid that Barack Obama was asked to approve it, and he looked at the evidence and he said, I can't do it. We're going to kill innocent civilians. Trump approved it, and a young American girl was killed. He literally pardoned Blackwater war criminals, the ones who did the Nisour Square massacre. He pardoned war criminals who killed civilians on purpose. So don't tell me, oh, anti-war. I can't deal with these people anymore, man. I can't. Thank you, Jon Stewart, for weighing in, because I'm so sick of these garbage arguments. And it feels like no matter how many times I repeat that those things are not true, a bunch of morons like RFK and Russell Brand and Jimmy Dore, they'll still parrot these things. Total fucking losers, total idiots. And at this point, they're liars. They're just denying the objective reality which we just laid out for you. But Jon Stewart can see through it, and he fucking nailed him on this one. All right, guys, that's the show. Love y'all very much. You know the drill. Everybody click like, click subscribe, support the show on Patreon, etc., etc., all that fun stuff. All right, I'll see you tomorrow for Crystal Kyle and Friends. By the way, I previously said Scahill was joining us. Wrong. The Vanguard boys are joining. The Vanguard boys are joining us. I'll see you guys there. Sign up on Substack below for Crystal Kyle and Friends. Peace. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.